Alright guys, welcome back to Whispering Wild. My name is Tyler, and today I'm going to teach you guys how to build a trolling motor mount for, this is a 50-pound Minn Kota thrust trolling motor. We're going to mount it on the kayak, and today basically this is going to be the first video to our kayak whitetail hunt series. It's the middle of June right now, and we're just starting to get the kayaks decked out, and this is going to be like, I guess, part one of our custom kayak build or whatever. So this is the goal today. We're gonna build this mount and we're going to cut the shaft down on the trolling motor. So let's hop right in and get to it. Okay guys, so what you need to build this trolling motor mount is roughly a 2x4 piece of wood, and then a piece of hardwood oak or something a little bit more dense and strong for the bottom piece, which is essentially going to clamp it to the canoe, to the rails here. What else you're going to need is a couple bolts with some washers and a wing nut, so you can take it on and off pretty easily. All right, so after trial and error, what we found works the best for this trolling motor mount, which gives you turning radius and control and stuff over the kayak, is off of the nose here. You're going to take your tape measure, the left edge of the tape right here on the center of the nose. You're going to measure down to the inside of the rail. We're sitting here at 26 3/8. That's kind of the sweet spot that we found, just being from testing different lengths. So you're going to do that on either side, and you're going to go ahead and mark it 26 3/8 from the nose to the inside rail, and that's going to be the edge of where this mount sits. Okay, so I've got the one we created already on Will's kayak right here. What we're gonna do is the overall length of the mount is going to be exactly 24 inches. And as you can see here, Will had a thicker piece and he cut it up. This is where it gives you the bite for the trolling motor clamp to sit on. As you can see right here, it's basically a big C-clamp. So like I was saying, my piece that I have is only 1 7/8 inches thick, 1 3/4 inches thick, sorry. I'm gonna go ahead and whatever scrap piece I cut off, I'm gonna screw to the top to give this piece more of a thickness. So we're gonna go ahead and mark 24 inches. 24. Take your speed square, square that over. That's gonna be the cut. Now, what I'm gonna do a little bit different than Will is I'm gonna go ahead and cut an angle on this. So I'm just gonna roughly line up where that is, and I'm going to kind of go with the flow of the boat here. So it's roughly something like that. So we're gonna head over to the saw and we'll go ahead and cut this. So what I was saying before is I'm gonna go ahead and screw this piece onto here. Roughly, it's probably gonna be like a 7-inch piece, something like that. I'll go over there and we'll measure it out and get a number for that and go ahead and screw this down. Okay, so we got this cut, we got it lined up. We're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go 6.5 inches for my top piece here. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark 6.5, and we'll square that over and we'll go cut that. Little Makita plug, NBD, no big deal, no shame. All right, so I've got a couple like epoxy coated deck screws. These suckers right here. I'll use a couple of them, maybe 3 of them. And that's what I'll use to mount that top piece down. All right, so the screw pattern I'm probably gonna roll with here is I'm gonna start one in that top corner, one kind of down low, one back in that top corner. There's nothing crazy about this. I'm just gonna go ahead and line her up at the end, flush with the end here. And that'll be that. Just bury those screws just past, line it up. now we have a piece perfectly flush in the end. Now we have that thickness for that clamp from the motor to sit on there. So I might run this over to the bandsaw, maybe just curve it off a little bit so there's no sharp edge, and we'll be good to go. We'll just dress it up a little bit. All right, that's where we're at now. Simple, guys. You definitely don't need anything crazy to make a mount. You know, Will and I looked online. It's like $100 for a mount, and this cost me, I think maybe I'm like $5 in the hole for those bolts. But yeah, let's get back to it. Okay, so for the bottom piece here, that kind of sandwiches this top rail, we're looking at, this one is 17, like 7/8. I'm gonna go 17 3/4 just to make it easy. So the degree right here, it's gonna be a 14-degree angle. So that's where it's gonna fit with the angle here of the hull. It's gonna slide back. Imagine this piece being under the rails here. It's gonna slide in and hit, and that's where it's gonna lock in. Right there, 14 degrees. Make sure you're there. I'm going right flush to the end. 17 3/4. So our next step is we've got our marks here that we created this before. All right, here's one, here's one. So we're gonna line up our piece on those two marks, just like that. You're gonna take your bottom piece, you're gonna go underneath, you're gonna slide it until it hits the hole. Basically, I'm just gonna eyeball mine where it looks straight. Clamp them both together, take a mark here and here. And then we're gonna drill some holes and get this mounted on there. All right, so I've got a 5/16 bolt here, 5/16 drill bit, and you can see here our marks are lined up. I'm gonna go ahead and just drill 2 holes. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill them one towards the back on the right side, towards the back of the piece, and then one towards the front of the piece. So then what I'll do is I'll drop the first bolt in, just kind of keep it lined up. Okay, have that one. Kind of roughly line up where we're gonna be again on our marks. We'll drill this hole. Got my bolt. I'm gonna put a washer on. I'm gonna come up through the bottom piece here. So that's gonna be tight there. I'll do that for both of them. Okay. Now that I have that, next step is washer. Washer, locking washer, and the bolts, or the wing nuts. Now your thing's tight, and we're gonna go ahead and drag the trolling motor out of the box, and we'll kind of mount it up here, and we'll show you why we're gonna cut the shaft and how we're gonna do that, just to mount and fit all this. So step 1 complete, motor mount. There it is. Simple, guys, real simple. All right, we got it pulled out. Here's the big C-clamp I was telling you guys about. To back these all the way out. All right, guys, so I actually just had to rip that down just a little bit. I had to take a 1/4 inch off due to this not opening up enough. So now you can understand why we added that second layer there, to give it some more beefiness. So we're gonna go ahead and we'll screw this down. So here's what you guys can understand why we need to cut the shaft. This thing doesn't need to be that tight or that far in the water. So you know, you set your depth where your prop isn't gonna hit the hole I'd recommend giving it probably, you know, at least 1 inch of clearance. Now if you gotta imagine, you're sitting in the kayak right here and you know, your head's here, your arm's gonna be way up behind you trying to turn and operate this. So what we're gonna do is, Will's got his over here. We've got Will's cut down already, and once his is mounted, it's much different. So his will sit here. Yeah, it sits at about the same height, but once it's dropped down in the water, his handle's way lower. So it's simple, it's just like a carbon shaft. We're gonna show you how to cut it, and yeah, then you'll be ready to rock. All right guys, so the first step on cutting your shaft down is we need to take the top piece off, which is held on by a couple screws, because the shaft goes up into here like a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch or something like that. So you need to pull that off. That way when you measure your shaft, you don't forget about the accounting for that part of it. So, you know, first step though would be to mount your motor, spin it, find the depth that the prop doesn't hit the bottom of the hole here. You need to make sure of that first. So like I said, I at least gave mine 1 inch of clearance down there. So we're gonna go ahead and pop the top off and we'll start cutting the shaft down. So there's a back screw here. Yeah, that nut falls out every time. Use this to our advantage. Now you have 2 screws back here. These screws are about, I think, 3/4 to 1 inch long, and they just screw into the plastic. There's no bolts at the end of them. Okay, now that you have all your screws out, we're gonna go ahead and drop this back down to working height. So this top piece comes off. There's nothing in it. What you want to do is, if you can get a look up here, let me drop this down. Okay, so as you guys can tell here, now that you have your front piece off, what you want to be careful is memorizing which way all of the wires go back on this bracket here. So the best thing to do would be to just take a photo of it, and that way you can memorize all these wires go on the relay here. Or you can screenshot this video. You're going to disconnect all these very carefully. You don't want to ruin. Make sure to grab the terminal part and not necessarily the wire, because you don't want to rip these off. What you're going to do now is, you know, you can see in here, these wires are all clipped through this slot right here. You just want to make sure when you put them back, they're all going to be the same. And this is a pretty crucial part. You need to make sure you don't break any of these wires or fray the outer rubber coating, because in return you could get a short and it could just ruin your motor. So I've got the motor propped up. I got the everything taken apart, ready to go. The number that worked for Will and I was, we cut off 8 3/4 inches. So like I was saying before, that bolt goes through the top here. The last one I pulled out that the top piece slid off, there's the screw hole. So that hole is exactly a 1/2 inch down from the end of the shaft, and it goes through both sides. You need to make sure you leave that 1/2 inch for it to slide into the head of the controller better. What I'm gonna do is, since this one's already cut, I'm just gonna go ahead, you know, eyeball it, line it up. I'm gonna go ahead and mark the shaft at where we cut this one. And this was 8 3/4. So that's gonna leave you with roughly a 25 3/4 inch shaft minus the 1/2 inch. So 25 1/4 inch shaft length, which is what we wanted. We wanted it to be short. You know, we're gonna be running up the rivers and stuff, so we don't need it super deep. We've done a lot of testing with it the last couple weeks, and these things motor with this 50-pound thrust. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how to cut them. All right guys, so like I was saying, you're gonna need something to slide in the shaft to cover the wires. That way, if you were to cut through the shaft without knowing, and you cut those wires, you're gonna ruin the outer coating here, and it'll cause a short in the wire, or you could cut the whole thing and just ruin your motor. So you wanna be careful. I don't have a piece of metal, which would be better, but I have a piece of wood, and as you can tell, here's our mark to cut. This will slide in here, And as I am cutting the shaft and rotating it around, I'm going to turn this piece to cover the wires as well. So what I've got here, Milwaukee with a metal blade on it. We tried a couple different things, and first we used like a pipe cutter, and that actually didn't work at all. This works the best that we found. So we're gonna go ahead and start cutting this here. There it is. Guys, check this out. I was pretty careful. See these little nicks here? That's where I would have hit wires. Alright, so after you have a piece of tape on here to protect it, we need to drill the 1/2-inch hole. So what you need to do is, this is kind of important. This will determine how straight your controller is to your prop. So it's got to be kind of as precise as you can. So on the original piece, like I showed you before, you're exactly a 1/2 inch on both sides. So the best thing to do would be stand behind your motor, get in line with it, and just kind of, you know, you basically just have to eyeball. I'm gonna mark a 1/2 inch. This is a smaller drill bit, and after I drill this hole, I'll use the correct size. Okay, first hole. That's done. Okay. Now I'm gonna get the correct size drill bit, and we'll be putting this back together in no time. All right, so this is where you need to make sure you have your wires going the right way. They have to come up this hole. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Your head's back on the shaft. Now remember, the back prop and the controller are not on the same end. Don't ask me how I know that, because we may or may not have screwed that up on the last one. So they're going opposite direction. This doesn't have to be crazy tight, I would say. Just snug it up. So now your head's mounted on, right? So the next step we're gonna have is reassembling all our wires to our controller. Remember, we took a photo. Got a photo right here. I'm gonna go ahead and reconnect all these wires. All right, so to get this to fit back in, it slides back in, and it's gonna clip in there. Now you kind of have to mess with all these wires and try and get them to fit in here. All right, so when you have your wires tucked in, your lid should fit snugly on there. It should not be pinching any wires. That would be bad. So I'm going to tilt this kind of back up. Take your screwdriver, start screwing these back together. You got clearance? And now it's the right height. And now Will's got some other things rigged up for an extension on your handle. Due to the handle only coming out so far, he just put some couple slits down it. You'll be able to slide it over the handle and, you know, just put some tape or something around it, whatever. You'll be able to control it better, just right here next to your shoulder. So what you're gonna see here on the next video is we're gonna be running these wires up the gunnel underneath. We're gonna do that real nice, get some black corrugate tubing and wrap them up there and secure them. We're gonna build a battery box or something for the front here, and maybe some light bars in the front, maybe. You have to wait and see for the next video, but you just learned how to make a trolling motor mount, cut your shaft down, and yeah. All right, so if we haven't said this before, these are the Old Town Sportsman Discovery 119 Kayak Canoe Hybrids. This is more for their hunting line. As you can tell, that's what we're gonna be using them for. So You know, my goal for the back is to be able to put, you know, backpack, camera gear, tree stand, and some climbing sticks in the back. We're gonna try and get the battery up front to kind of counterbalance that weight. But we should be able to rip up and down the streams and rivers with these suckers. So stay tuned for our next video, guys. We really appreciate it. Once again, my name's Tyler. Will's behind the camera, and this is our new channel, Whispering Wild. So if you guys could subscribe and like the video, we'd really appreciate it. It'd really help us out. So we'll catch you on the next one.